done with the prove it game. I don't need to prove to you why that's your law.
I would love reconciliation with my family. I've always...
Meghan Markle, poised and speaking eloquently about the dangers of cyberbullying during a CBS Sunday Morning interview, suddenly fell silent. Prince Harry, seated beside her, had cut in just a few words, nothing dramatic. "If you know how to help," he said. But those 5 words changed everything. Meghan's reaction was immediate, and it wasn't just verbal, it was physical, visceral. Her voice tightened, clipped. Her jaw set, her eyes locked on Harry's with a flash of something that no one could quite name, but everyone felt. In that instant, a look passed between them, not of love, not of support, but of tension, of restrained frustration, of something deeper, simmering beneath the surface. The moment, though less than 60 seconds long, would erupt into something far greater. Millions watched the clip when it aired, but when it hit social media, the reaction was seismic. Viewers slowed it down, froze the frames, and dissected every twitch, every blink. Was Meghan angry? Was Harry afraid? Was it just a couple's minor miscommunication or a public crack in a once-united front? For a couple known for carefully controlling their public image, this looked uncontrolled, raw. The kind of moment you can't rehearse, can't retake. One blink too many. A half-second of hesitation. A hand movement that looked too tight. Suddenly, it wasn't just a clip. It was evidence. Evidence that something was off. The media, always hungry for royal intrigue, pounced. Headlines screamed. Speculation. Tension between Meghan and Harry? Is the fairy tale over? Body language experts weigh in on frosty glare. The footage spread like wildfire newsrooms, reaction videos, think pieces. And at the center of it all was a glance, just a glance, but it hit like a thunderclap. Meghan and Harry had built a brand on unity, on love that broke boundaries and traditions. But now, that brand was wobbling, and the world noticed. The silence between Meghan and Harry in that moment spoke louder than any royal statement ever could. And this wasn't just internet noise. Longtime supporters began whispering doubts. Critics felt vindicated. The press dissected the moment, labeling it the glare, the freeze, the shift. Analysts argued over whether Meghan's reaction was just frustration or something more, something that hinted at deeper control, or perhaps years of unspoken resentment. Some said it was nothing. Others said it was everything. But the truth? The truth was murky, hidden beneath layers of performance, persona, and pressure. What was meant to be a powerful appearance, a couple standing together, advocating for an important cause, had become something else entirely. A silent collapse, a public unraveling captured in HD. People weren't watching the interview anymore. They were watching them. Their eyes, their hands, their silence. And suddenly, everything about Meghan and Harry's story, everything they had fought to control, felt like it was spiraling away from them. To understand the weight of that moment, we must delve into the subtle cues that speak louder than words. What did Meghan and Harry's gestures reveal? The CBS clip, while brief, opened a floodgate of unspoken signals that experts and viewers alike couldn't ignore. Meghan's face remained composed, but her body told a different story. Her eyes blinked rapidly, unnaturally so, a classic sign of inner turmoil. In psychological terms, rapid blinking often signifies heightened stress or irritation. Then came the unmistakable tension in her jaw, clenched tightly, as if holding something in rage, disappointment, or maybe just restraint. But it was her hands that drew the most speculation. Resting in her lap, her fingers slowly curled inward. Subtle, but deliberate. Some called it the claw. Others saw it as a micro-expression of control unraveling in real time. That motion wasn't theatrical. It was instinctive, revealing far more than words ever could. Then there was the turn, the slow, deliberate tilt of her head toward Harry. It wasn't affectionate. It wasn't inquisitive. It was calculated. It was the kind of turn that said, "You weren't supposed to speak." Her expression didn't change dramatically, but the energy shifted, and anyone paying attention could feel it. Meghan is known for being media-trained, always polished, always precise. So when that polish cracked even slightly, it meant something. It wasn't just discomfort. It was disruption. The flow of the moment was broken, and she knew it. Her reaction wasn't loud, but it was sharp, as if she had rehearsed a rhythm that had now been thrown off beat by Harry's untimely interjection. And Harry, his response, spoke volumes too. After those few words, his entire posture changed. He looked down, avoiding Meghan's eyes. His shoulders hunched slightly, pulling inward. He didn't double down or add anything else. Instead, he retreated, not with his feet, but with his body, as if he had stepped into a storm he hadn't seen coming. That subtle physical withdrawal was not the move of a confident partner. It was the move of a man who realized, in real time, that he had said the wrong thing. Not because of the content, but because of the timing. And more importantly, because of who he interrupted. Body language experts didn't take long to dissect. The footage, they pointed out every micro-expression, every twitch, every inch of physical tension between them. Meghan's stiff posture, Harry's turned shoulders, the lack of eye contact. All signs, they argued, of misalignment. Not just in that moment, but perhaps in their broader dynamic. This wasn't the couple who once finished each other's sentences with ease. This wasn't the Meghan and Harry who laughed and leaned in during interviews, who shared silent glances filled with warmth. This was something different. This was awkward, disjointed, exposed, and that's what made the moment so jarring. For fille toi fille, two people so calculated in their public appearances, who know the power of optics better than anyone, this looked off. It looked real in a way that wasn't flattering. In that 60-second exchange, the masks seemed to slip, just enough, for the world to see what might be hiding underneath. It wasn't a scandal. It wasn't a fight. It was something smaller, but perhaps more telling. A moment of misalignment, and in a relationship that's built its brand on being in sync, even a flicker of disharmony feels seismic. Beyond the gestures lies a history of a couple who once captivated the world with their unity. The love story between Meghan Markle and Prince Harry wasn't just unexpected, it was seismic. An American actress with a biracial background stepping into the most tradition-bound monarchy in the world? It was unprecedented. The media painted it as a bold new chapter for the House of Windsor, a progressive pivot, a symbol of change. Their courtship unfolded like a fairy tale, from secret meetings in Botswana to their engagement announcement that felt less like a press event and more like the opening scene of a royal renaissance. And when they stood together on their wedding day, beaming and defiant, the world watched with awe. But the moment the wedding bells faded, the real story began. And it wasn't the one they'd hoped to write. The applause quickly turned into analysis. The warmth of public approval cooled as scrutiny crept in. Their honeymoon with the press was short-lived. Headlines once filled with admiration shifted to suspicion. Every gesture was picked apart, every glance reinterpreted. When Meghan cradled her baby bump, she was accused of showing off. When Harry refused to pose with the press after Archie's birth, he was branded cold. The couple's charm, which once seemed spontaneous and refreshing, began to be seen as calculated. And beneath it all, the relentless machinery of the British tabloid industry churned louder than ever. But Meghan and Harry didn't bow to it. They made the most controversial decision of their lives. They stepped away. In January 2020, with one carefully worded Instagram post, they announced they were stepping back as senior royals. The monarchy was shaken. The public was stunned. And the media? They erupted. Accusations flew. Was this abandonment? Was Meghan manipulating Harry? Was Harry betraying his legacy? The couple said they wanted peace, privacy, a chance to build a life on their terms. But peace, ironically, became even more elusive. Their exit, dubbed Megxit by tabloids, sparked global headlines and an avalanche of opinion pieces. And from that point on, their lives were no longer theirs alone. They belonged to the narrative. As the months passed, Meghan and Harry tried to reclaim control. Oprah, Spotify, Netflix. Every new project was positioned as empowerment, but it came with a price. With each interview and speech, more pieces of their story were revealed, and with them, new controversies were born. The royal family remained largely silent, but the public opinion was anything but. Once seen as brave trailblazers, they were, now portrayed by some as reckless, opportunistic, even ungrateful. The warmth was gone. In its place, polarization. You were either with them or against them. It wasn't just the public they had to contend with, it was the media machine that built them up, only to tear them down. Meghan was called a diva. Harry was labeled lost. Their love, once idolized, became ammunition for debate. And yet, they stood firm. They pressed on, appearing at summits, launching foundations, raising their children in Montecito, far from the shadows of the palace, yet still under the same unrelenting spotlight. Because no matter how far they ran, the cameras followed. As their roles evolved, so did the dynamics within their partnership, leading to moments of visible strain. For years, the public saw a royal duo walking in sync, hand in hand, united in message and mission. But beneath the coordinated outfits and carefully crafted interviews, there was a current running between them, one that hinted at something far more layered. Meghan Markle, sharp, composed, and media-savvy, has long been perceived as the strategist. Her words are deliberate, her delivery controlled. In public appearances, she rarely falters, rarely deviates. Every gesture feels measured, every phrase finely tuned. It's no surprise that insiders describe her as the engine behind their brand, polished, focused, and fiercely protective of her narrative. Harry, in contrast, is the heart. Emotionally open, sometimes impulsive, and often unfiltered, he doesn't hide discomfort. He doesn't memorize talking points. What he lacks in polish, he makes up for in sincerity and unpredictability. That unpredictability, while endearing to some, clashes with Meghan's precision. It's a dynamic that worked in the early days, when their cause was rebellion against the royal institution. But as the spotlight moved from their escape to their evolution, cracks began to show. Harry's relaxed nature, his off-the-cuff remarks, started to feel misaligned with Meghan's tightly run script. It wasn't just a difference in style, it became a difference in control. And control matters, especially when you're building an empire not just on image, but influence. Meghan, with her Hollywood background, understands optics in a way few royals ever have. She leads the room. She steers interviews. She often answers questions first, sometimes exclusively. And when Harry does speak out of turn, as seen in the now infamous CBS moment, the tension is visible. It's not about dominance, it's about structure. She builds it, he disrupts it. Whether intentional or not, the imbalance is palpable. Observers have noted it time and again. Meghan shines in solo ventures, her podcast, her speeches, her initiatives. Harry appears more at ease in collective settings, veterans events, mental health forums, charity visits. Together, they are compelling. But when separated, their strengths become more distinct. Meghan is corporate. Harry is grassroots. She's calculated. He's candid. And while opposites can attract, they can also collide, especially when both are expected to carry the weight of a billion-dollar public image. Behind closed doors, the question isn't just about love, it's about leadership. Who sets the tone? Who decides what is said and what is off-limits? Reports suggest Meghan often takes the lead in shaping their narrative, selecting interview segments and refining brand messaging. Harry, meanwhile, follows, but not always, comfortably. His discomfort was visible in the Oprah interview. It resurfaced in their Netflix docuseries, and it peaked in that tense CBS moment. For all their united messaging, there are moments when their energy doesn't align, when it's clear that one is steering while the other tries to keep pace. Public appearances offer a glimpse, but it's the behind-the-scenes moments that often reveal the most. The CBS interview, crafted as a quiet yet powerful conversation about online harassment, mental health, and public service, ended up igniting something far more volatile. What was supposed to be a controlled narrative, led with calm voices and shared purpose, cracked under the weight of one unscripted moment. Meghan's subtle shift in demeanor, Harry's awkward glance downward, it didn't take long for the internet to catch fire. Within hours, clips were clipped, slowed down, dissected frame by frame. Analysts, fans, and critics alike didn't just react, they pounced. The moment became bigger than the interview itself. It was no longer about cyberbullying. It was about them. The media capitalized instantly. Tabloids spun wild theories. Is the Sussex marriage in trouble? Power struggle exposed on camera. Talk show panels erupted with speculation. Morning hosts debated body language. Evening commentators questioned authenticity. Even once neutral, outlets leaned in with curiosity, framing headlines around the glare, the freeze, and the moment that changed everything. Royal watchers, once focused on policy or charity, now had a new obsession interpreting silence. The narrative took a sharp turn from noble advocacy to alleged friction, and that shift came with consequences. Their brand, so carefully curated, over years built on empathy, unity, and resilience, began to show fractures. Meghan and Harry were no longer seen simply as survivors of royal rigidity or champions of progressive causes. They were now at the center of a media cyclone they once tried to escape. Endorsements and public partnerships didn't vanish, but the tone around them shifted. Brands became cautious. Their message, once universally resonant, was now polarizing. What should have been a promotional win suddenly cast a shadow over everything they stood for. And the worst part? It wasn't due to anything they said. It was what they couldn't hide. Royal insiders weighed in with carefully chosen words. That was revealing, said one former palace aide off-record. It wasn't the message they intended, but it was the message people heard. Others speculated on the internal fallout, questions about strategy, disagreements behind closed doors, even tensions with PR teams who had worked tirelessly to protect their image. And while the Sussexes remained publicly silent on the moment, their silence itself became part of the conversation. Was it embarrassment? Was it defiance? Or was it calculated restraint? What the world saw in those few seconds couldn't be undone. And in today's age, perception shapes everything. It decides public support. It influences global headlines. And most importantly, it defines credibility. For a couple that once prided themselves on transparency and authenticity, this moment felt like a rupture between what they say and what they show. And once that seed of doubt is planted, it spreads fast, far faster than any PR team can contain. As the dust settles, questions linger about the authenticity of their public personas. Meghan and Harry didn't just marry into royalty, they married into the most scrutinized institution on Earth. And the moment they chose to step back from it, the media lens didn't soften, it sharpened. Every headline photo, every carefully clipped soundbite began feeding a new kind of royal narrative, one no longer controlled by the palace, but not entirely controlled by them either. Traditional outlets framed their actions as betrayal, while progressive voices called them courageous. But somewhere in between lay a deeper truth. The media wasn't just reporting the story, it was rewriting it in real time. Social media, too, became its own battlefield. What began as a tool for connection quickly turned into a platform for public trial. Hashtags trended overnight. Clips from interviews, taken out of context or slowed to an almost forensic degree, became proof of everything from marital rifts to manipulation. One glance from Meghan became a meme. One shift from Harry, a debate topic. Online armies formed, some defending Meghan with unrelenting passion, others tearing her down with venomous precision. And through it all, the couple's voices, when heard, sounded quieter, somehow swallowed by the noise they couldn't control. They tried, of course. Their media strategy evolved with each wave of criticism. From Oprah to Netflix, from Spotify to staged charity appearances, they attempted to reclaim the narrative. But control in the digital age is an illusion. What you say can be drowned by what others see. What you mean can be twisted by how others feel. And the more Meghan and Harry spoke, the more polarized their audience became. For every viewer who saw strength, another saw spectacle. For every admirer who praised their authenticity, there was a skeptic convinced it was all part of a scripted arc. It's a relentless paradox, because in this age, silence is interpreted as guilt, and transparency is seen as performance. Meghan and Harry, once icons of modern reinvention, now walk a line so thin it barely exists. One wrong phrase, one off-camera glance, one unguarded moment. That's all it takes for the entire narrative to shift. And it does, constantly. Because their story isn't theirs anymore, it belongs to the crowd. And the crowd demands drama, not truth. Maintaining a public image today is more than a PR challenge. It's a psychological toll. It's exhaustion masked with grace, vulnerability wrapped in media coaching. For Meghan and Harry, the question has become not what they want to share, but what they're allowed to feel in public before the world decides what it means. Authenticity, in their case, is no longer just personal, it's political. And that level of pressure, of constant second-guessing, can distort even the strongest of relationships. Beyond the headlines, the couple faces personal challenges that test their resilience. Behind the royal titles are individuals grappling with personal demons and public pressures. For Meghan Markle, the glamorous facade shattered early. While the world saw a radiant duchess wrapped in royal gowns and global admiration, behind palace walls, she was unraveling. In one of the most gut-wrenching confessions to ever come from a member of the royal family, Meghan revealed that she had suffered suicidal thoughts during her time in the monarchy. Not in silence, but in suffocating stillness. She asked for help. She begged, but the institution designed to protect the crown wasn't built to protect her. It was a plea that never met compassion. Instead, it was met with silence, and in that silence, her sense of self began to vanish. Harry's battle, though different in shape, was just as raw. He grew up being hunted by cameras, haunted by flashbulbs, and forever followed by the shadow of his mother's death. That trauma didn't fade, it calcified. The pressure to conform, the relentless comparisons to his brother, the demands to serve a system that never asked what he needed, all of it built into a quiet storm inside him. Leaving the royal family wasn't just a rebellious act, it was survival. He didn't want history to repeat itself. But in trying to protect Meghan, he found himself spiraling into new battles, media vendettas, family estrangement, and the loss of the only life he had ever known. Their union, once hailed as a fairy tale, began to bear the weight of all these invisible wounds. Public life magnified their pain. Every interview became a gamble, every appearance a test. Were they too vulnerable? Too calculated? Too emotional? Critics found fault in their openness. But it was never about attention. It was about liberation. They weren't sharing for pity. They were sharing for purpose. Meghan and Harry chose to weaponize their pain into advocacy, launching initiatives for mental health awareness, championing therapy, and challenging the stigma that nearly destroyed them. They became faces of resilience. But even resilience has a breaking point, because the truth no one wants to admit is that fame doesn't shield you from suffering, it amplifies it. When Meghan cried, it was analyzed. When Harry lashed out, it was labeled weakness. Their emotions were never allowed to simply be human. They had to be strategic, performative, justified. And in that twisted cycle, where every truth becomes a headline, their reality became distorted. The line between who they are and who the world thinks they are blurred. Behind the smiles, behind the perfectly phrased statements, were two people clinging to each other in a storm no one could see in full. Their fight for privacy wasn't a contradiction to their public revelations. It was the only way they could regain control. By speaking out, they silenced the lies. By showing the cracks, they reclaimed their image from the media's hands. But the question remains, how much can any couple endure when their every breath is analyzed? When every step forward is seen as betrayal by someone, somewhere? As they navigate these challenges, the future of their partnership remains a subject of speculation. With the world watching, what lies ahead for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex? The curtain has not fallen on their story. It's only just begun. Its second act. Meghan and Harry are no longer symbols of rebellion or royalty. They are something more unpredictable. Human icons navigating a maze of public expectation and private truth. The fairy tale is long gone, but in its place is something more powerful, a narrative forged through hardship, stripped of illusions, and charged with the raw urgency of purpose. But purpose alone cannot shield them from what comes next. Because, in every step they take, a question follows. Are they building a legacy or merely surviving one? Professionally, they remain at a crossroads. Their Archewell Foundation, their production deals, their philanthropic ventures, each a reflection of their desire to do meaningful work beyond the monarchy. But the public's appetite for their story is shifting. What once attracted global sympathy now draws divided opinion. Can they sustain relevance without relying on their royal past? Or has the very act of stepping away condemned them to always chase a spotlight that is either too bright or fading too fast? Their efforts are ambitious films, podcasts, global summits. But behind every headline lies an undercurrent of doubt. Is the world still listening? On a more personal front, whispers of reconciliation with the royal family continue to swirl. The possibility lingers like a storm on the horizon. Could there be a thaw between brothers? A healing with a father whose health now casts a long shadow over the palace? Or has too much been said? Too many bridges burned under the fire of public confession? The monarchy, steeped in silence and protocol, rarely forgets or forgives. And while Harry once believed he could bridge the gap between tradition and progress, it now seems the distance is only growing. Yet not all is conflict. There is, still, a profound intimacy between them, a resilience that has carried them through storms most couples would not survive. Whether they continue together as activists, creators, or even simply as parents determined to raise their children far from royal duty, they have already defied expectation. They did not collapse under scrutiny, they adapted. But adaptation is not the same as resolution. The fight for identity, autonomy, and acceptance still rages on, only now it does so on unfamiliar ground. Public sentiment, once overwhelmingly sympathetic, now swings like a pendulum. Some see them as brave truth-tellers, others as opportunists, exploiting their own trauma. But perhaps that's the cost of rewriting your role in history. You lose control over how it ends, and maybe that's why their future feels so compelling, because it's uncertain, unscripted, and still unfolding before our eyes. In the end, their story is a mirror reflecting the complexities of love, duty, and identity in the modern age. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.